Doctor? Doctor, come quickly!
I can't!
Will Maddox, I have a question for you.
Hello. Is it a really lame pun?
I guess you'll have to wait and find out. What is a slave's least favourite part of their body?
It's a lash, isn't it? There's something like a lash, because lash, whip, lash. I don't know how time it's going to figure into that, so tell me.
Why would it need to figure... doesn't fit into time. It's just eyelashes.
Oh. Oh, right.
You came close.
I thought it was going to be a... Yeah, I thought it was going to be a play on the title of Timelash, so somehow be... I don't know. Anyway, now we got that thing out of the way.
You expected something a bit more complicated than I always give.
Yeah, you're always banging on about better storytelling for Chibnall. Well, I expect better puns from you, Connor. Okay, no.
Except the difference is that this is actually self-aware. Whereas I don't think Chris Chibnall is self-aware.
Obligatory Chris Chibnall bashing out.
Exactly. Now, let's move on. Hello and welcome to the next Worst of Classic Who video. We haven't done one of these in pretty much a year, at least in terms of recording, because I delayed the Twin Dilemma one until December in the December dump. And with me I have the person who actually...
Martin is such a lad.
Yes. Say something mean about him, actually.
His hair is as tall as giraffe pussy. There we go. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. Just a fact.
And as you can see, we have the person who actually did the animation of the December dump.
Oh yeah, I forgot I did that.
Yes, I know. That is the magnum opus of your animation career, is a cartoon poo hitting a floor.
Yeah, like fuck all my Maddox and Friends stuff. Fuck Time Lord Nictorious. I did for the Universals. Just cartoon shit from the world.
I issue all spoiler warning, because in these videos we discuss things we've seen. For me, that's all of New Who and most of Classic Who. So if you haven't and you're scared, then beware, because Torchwood will be waiting. Couldn't resist that one. I'd say leave a comment about the what happens at the end of these videos, but we're pretty much build up on that, and we pretty much have it all set in stone, so don't leave a comment. Here's a list.
Do not like, do not subscribe, do not smash that bell.
No, God no. There's this list on the screen that has all the stories that we've done in this marathon, and as you can see at the bottom, once we do all of the ones on the Classic Who front page, these little locks will unlock. That's something that maybe you can animate well. We have these little locks at the bottom, and they're going to unlock, and we'll be able to watch Dimensions in Time, which will be the finale.
The grand finale to your journey.
Yes, I actually haven't decided whether I'm going to watch The Wheel in Space before or after Dimensions in Time.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know which one I'm going to do.
I'd say, well, this is going to just be mean to Dimensions in Time, but I'd say watch The Wheel in Space after to wash the shitty taste out of your mouth.
Well, what I would say is that The Wheel in Space isn't actually part of the Worst of Classic Who series, and whereas Dimensions in Time is. So that would cap off that arc, whereas The Wheel in Space is going to be something separate. So we'll do that after.
Oh yeah, you are nearing the end of your Worst of Classic Who journey, your Classic Who journey in general.
Yes, because we are on
like, what,
season 22.
4 or 5?
Well, yeah, we've got Timelash today, and then we've got Time in the Rani, Paradise Towers, Dragonfire, and we do have Silver Nemesis, but I've already filmed that, by the way. I filmed that a year ago.
Cheeky.
And yeah, and then there's Dimensions in Time, and then all that will be left is The Wheel in Space. Which, when I started this Worst of Classic Who series, I was hoping that the Wheel in Space would be animated by now, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Blech.
All we have is about 10 minutes of part 1. So yeah, Timelash. I've never seen Timelash, but I have heard many, many, many terrible things about it. I've heard that Paul Darrow is in it. I hear that H.G. Wells is in it. I hear that it has a lot of weird time travel antics. I hear that it has Twin Dilemma almost levels of Sixth Doctor and Perry content. I hear that it has some kind of weird monster thing. I hear that it's in Antonio's top 3 of all time, which is why the original plan was to have him be the guest on this, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it, so I found my plan B replacement on the bench. Will
Your
Maddox.
backup bitch.
Yeah, it's my backup bench. So yeah, that I have never seen this story before, and it's the only TV Colin Baker story I haven't seen yet. Well, apart from the affects us on torrents, but we're not going to count that.
Yeah, fuck that. I don't know if I'd say it's the worst Colin story. It's certainly a lower tier for him. In terms of production, it's a bit, I wouldn't say it's like Underworld level, like hideous looking, but it does have pretty distracting production issues that have affected its reputation, and I don't think the story is particularly solid either. As I know you are someone who enjoys the Sixth Doctor for entertainment value rather than critical value.
Sometimes I enjoy it for critical value, but it depends on the story.
Like Revelation of the Daleks or
Vengeance of the Philip Martin stories I really like.
Yeah, but Timelash is not one of those. Oh god.
Yeah.
It will appeal to your,
like, for example, something like The Two Doctors I watched the other day, and like its whole message is fucked in the head. Because it's like refusing to the Second Doctor refusing for augmentation of a species for progressive betterness of their culture and whatnot, because he believes that they can never be changed, and the story proves it, which is really stupid. But it's also hilarious. It's so entertaining.
Timelash is kind of a similar beast because it also has a few weird like morals.
Yeah.
But is also entertaining at the same time.
It's the same thing with the Mark of the Rani. The Mark of the Rani misses out on doing a really good dive into the Industrial Revolution and how it's like kind of caused us to have all these environmental issues, and it's caused capitalism to become skyrocketed and all sorts of things, but it portrays all of the workers as being cheerful and good, and basically the story just focuses on the Rani and the Master being fun villains and just having a romp with like exploding trees and whatnot, and it's just like a really cute little historical rather than a political drama that it could be. That's another example where I think Pip and Jane Baker they're just too like wholesome to make something actually captivating.
Yeah, they were too pure for this world. So
yeah.
Before we start Timelash, I do have a fun anecdote about Timelash that is kind of relevant to when we are filming this, because as we are filming this, it's been over 5 years of the 13th Doctor. God. But when they announced Jodie Whittaker for the role, I remember exactly where I was when they announced it. I was doing a marathon of all of Doctor Who back in 2017. And on the very day that it was announced, I was on Timelash in my marathon. And I just finished watching it. I checked my phone, and then there was the clip of her like walking through the woods. And I was like, huh, cool. And I went out to the local kebab shop to get something to eat to watch Revelation of the Daleks with. And then I messaged a friend of mine, like being like, oh yeah, I just finished Timelash. And then this friend was like, fuck you and your bloody Timelash. What about the news?
Fuck you and your bloody Timelash. That's hopeful to know that this story is more exciting to think about than the 13th Doctor. I'm that's a positive, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, when she was announced, I was just like, who's that? I don't know who that is.
That was my reaction. I mean, when I saw that clip, she did seem far more enigmatic than because she doesn't talk or say anything. She just like smiles like serenely at the camera. I was like,
she had like
is she gonna be a?
She had like a $20 hoodie on.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, is she like gonna be like a cool and collected kind of character? Little do you know that when it gets to her ear, she's like, actually, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh, okay. But there we are. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked.
Alright, so it's time for me to unbox my DVD that I purchased in 2017, so it's been 5 years since I bought this. The plastic wrapper is still on it.
Oh. It's been imprisoned for 5 years.
That's right. Let's tear that plastic off. Hopefully it doesn't smell terrible. That'd be disappointing.
Oh no, I tend to find that DVDs always smell really good when you open them for the first time.
Yeah, because unfortunately I think plastic is like so durable that it kind of lasts longer than our human body does, which is really sad.
Yeah.
Least
Turn me into a DVD. Just okay, no, I'm okay with that. But...
Well, it doesn't go well under heat though, because I remember when I got the Kinder and Snake Dance DVDs, it was left in a bag. They pushed it into my letterbox and it went through the other side, and it was sitting in the hot sun. And I'm sure you understand what a hot sun is. It was sitting there, and when I pulled them out, like they were so hot that like the plastic was bendable, and I had to try and keep them like intact and just cool them down. Otherwise, they'd end up really like curvy.
Ah. Ouch. Not good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, not good.
On a scale of yum to bum, how good does it smell?
When I smell this, for some reason I think of the comic book guy from The Simpsons.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite things about whenever they do a new missing episode animation. Like, on top of having the animation, just getting that DVD and smelling that new DVD smells like... Ooh.
Yeah, it's like I can smell the shop.
You know, it's weird. This title sequence, it always gives me, like, the mental image of, like, going down a motorway at night into a really, like, overlit city with all the lights on. Yeah,
oh,
that's what this title sequence always makes me think of. Specifically with this music, I don't know why.
I was genuinely surprised when I found out people didn't like it. Andromeda's a nice name for a woman.
Where would the first lady suggest?
I don't mind.
It sounds like a fucking bike horn when he does that.
See, sometimes I like their banter.
Yes. Purposeful travel, not aimless wanderings.
Aimless? You see our time together as aimless?
Triggered.
No.
That's what Ian said to the first Doctor. Aimless, my dear boy, aimless!
I hate you so much, but can we keep staying together, please?
Yes, it's a love-hate relationship.
We are really mediocrely acted rebels.
That blonde guy's a twink. He's a proper twink. I love a good bland hallway.
Breathing is the epitome of acting. Oh.
Oh boy. That's very gay.
Didn't the Daleks have one of
The
those?
Daleks?
The Daleks. She must have heard about it, because Resurrection was before she joined.
Yeah. I actually like Perry's outfit in this story.
It's like, it's still like kind of sexy, but it's not like, it's not excessive.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the thing that Rebecca TV hates, where they're like, she looks like she's going to be cold and needs a jacket.
Yeah. It's not going to be like she's stepping onto an Arctic wasteland in nothing but a thong and nipple tassels.
Yeah, and high heels.
See, like, I feel so mixed about their banter. Like, sometimes it's fun, and then other times it's like, oh, you're really over-egging it. Oh no, not the twink. Oh, he's being collared. Kinky.
It's missing a bit of the... It needs a bit more love, I think, to balance it out. I'd say. That man's very blue. Feel like Rose Tyler in the end of the world. Like, he's blue. Looks like Ian McKellen. That guy looks like if you bought Christian Bale from Wish.com.
I like our totalitarian ruler. I don't.
What you're doing is strawmanning the story, actually.
I know.
The boy is a self-confessed rebel. Banish him.
It's clearly just homophobia.
I already like Paul Darrow. He's got a lot of presence. He's very charismatic. Look at that hair as well. He looks like a proper, like... He looks like when Freddie Mercury still had long hair, except not like fabulous and shampooed. It's just like really dry and...
Yeah. Here we are. This is the Timelash.
Okay. Let's see what this Timelash is all about. Is it going to be as exciting as when Sol Deed imprisons people? Okay.
So underwhelming.
Didn't get to see it. Yeah, it's nowhere near as exciting as when Sol Deed banishes people. You know, like when he does it to weakling scum.
Oh yeah.
This is actually how law works, by the way, everyone. This is what happens when you get sent to prison.
You get thrust into tinsel.
Hmm.
I love how unenthused they are. Just like, ah. Oh, this guy. He plays Professor Chronotis in Sharda and the Keeper in The Keep of Traken.
Yeah, I thought I recognized him.
I hope you're taking great care of my only daughter.
Of course. As my future wife, I could hardly do anything else.
Then cure her of her stubbornness.
That dialogue's a bit clunky.
It reminds me of when they introduced Cersei and Jaime in Game of Thrones. It's like, as your brother.
Yeah. She's
Wow.
my daughter. I'm fucking her.
Wow. This dad is a right Tory. We are above the law here.
Anything could happen. Dun-dun, 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 dun. Is it just me, or do these outfits seem somewhat like Star Warsy?
Yeah, they do.
The fact they keep talking about rebels doesn't help.
It reminds me a bit of the Endor stuff, but without the green.
I've no other choice but to obey.
Ooh, authoritarianism, eh?
Ah, they said there was no monitoring in there, but there is. That's not a plot hole, obviously. That is deliberate, but
Yeah, there's monitoring from the authority that is in control of them, assumedly.
yeah, sounds like Banacafalata.
Hmm.
You are requested to attend the Borad.
It's like Banacafalata, but as a
Oh,
Mondasian
I placed it now. His hair reminds me of the Robots of Death.
Oh.
Whoa! This looks like a Michael Rosen poop.
Where's the Borat?
Imbecile. I am the Borad.
Oh, shit.
For another election.
Aged to death!
It's one of my favourite bad effects in all of Doctor Who.
I know, the way he just flops on his face as well. Like he folds like his body folds like a flip phone.
Like a Family Guy death
Yeah,
animation.
yeah.
It's called treason, and he is the traitor.
No.
Prepare the Timelash.
Oh, he's easily the best thing about this story.
I love him. I love him. He's so fun. He's just so flamboyant and like so much bravado, if you know what I mean. It's just that's like when Clara wants to throw the keys into the volcano.
Yeah.
Whoa! Whoa! What?
It appears the Doctor is attempting a return visit to our planet.
Hey, he knows about the Doctor. Oh, right, of course. The jump Pertwee thing on the wall. I forgot about that.
Yep. This is a sequel to an unseen adventure.
Okay.
Imagine how disappointed I was when I found out that the adventure doesn't actually exist.
Have they done the Third Doctor one in, like, in the EU somewhere?
I don't think they have.
About this time corridor in space.
All in good time, Doctor. All in good time.
Is that going to be a running joke in this story?
What?
Time jokes.
Time just flies when you're in the
Ah.
farthest.
That
Oh, dear.
surprised me.
Old Darrow wants some of that Perry. It's like when Lando Calrissian sees Leia and he's like, "Hello, what have we here?"
Oh yeah, Perry's botany finally comes up. Quite
Perry
properly.
is a bit of...
You could be right.
I'm so fabulous.
Oh yes, is this the Bandrel?
Yes. The infamous sock puppets.
I know Antonio's a big fan of these.
You will find that extremely difficult.
It appears that diplomacy has failed.
Yes, indeed. Rather like you and your starving planet, Ambassador.
Oh my god, that's brutal! The gayest war of all time.
Oh no! Why are you doing this? Because, darling.
Because, darling, it seems that you have a starving planet. Look at those couches. They're like designed for that position. It's Perry complaining about the BBC production values.
I have arranged a short tour of the Citadel.
Splendid.
For your assistant.
Did you see the way he bent his hand?
Yeah.
Oh, your assistant.
You see, we need an excuse to separate you two.
Yeah, the Sixth Doctor's not the best at health and safety, is he?
You seriously expect me to go through space and time looking for a lost girl and her trinket? Give me one good reason why I should.
Perry.
Ah, of course.
Oh, damn it, Perry. Oh my god, plants!
You think Perry knows how to grow weed?
Good I mean, considering she was concerned about her St. Christopher earlier, I imagine she's probably against it.
Well, she's not into cannabis, okay. Damn Christian girls.
I'm a good girl. I don't smoke weed.
That's a good impression. What did she just pull the tongue at the fucking pond? Uh-oh.
Oh, he's gonna choke her.
I'm not into this kinky stuff.
Eat plant.
Well, at least she knows about that. Oh no.
Oh,
That android is just like swaying his shoulders around.
I feel so sorry for Nicola Bryant just having to run in heels all the time.
Whoa. That's like a
Clop,
salt.
clop, clop,
It's
clop.
like, it's like a salt and pepper laser. Wait, is this just like? Oh, for a second I was thinking the trash compactor from Star Wars and the Death Star. Imagine if it was.
Is it really? She was an impressive young woman.
Yes, indeed, she was.
Oh,
On the other hand, perhaps I know
straight people.
Yes, indeed she was. Damn, nice. There's some nice weed steam in this place. She won't like that.
Beautiful fragrance.
Oh, apparently she disagrees.
Oh, okay.
Perry's tempted over to the side of drugs.
Yeah, this is her gateway. Oh, hello there.
Oh,
Good luck, Doctor. For Perry's sake, don't come back empty-handed.
the reason I am...
I am more fabulous than you.
Oh, here we go. Now it's historical. Whoa. You know, I think this story would be a lot funnier if it was in the Williams era. Because I
Probably.
think the jokes would be a lot more witty than they are.
I see. Instances like that, like whenever I think of Perry, I just think of moments like this. Like, I'm backed up against a wall. Help. I can't do anything. She's like a turtle that's fallen on her back. Like,
A plucky creature who knows how to take
A plucky creature.
yeah, we have another villain that wants to boink Perry.
Based.
This was given to my grandfather by the doctor. Do you know who she is?
Ah, Joe Grant.
What? Joe Grant. She used to travel with the doctor.
Oh, that's really lucky that the doctor shared all that information.
Yeah.
Or maybe Perry was being nosy.
See, Perry knows who Joe is, and she knows about the Dalek time corridor despite not having met the Daleks yet. Like, she just completely knows a lot. Even behind the scenes, the Doctor's continuity fan wanking.
To be fair, yeah, I can believe that the Sixth Doctor is an oversharer.
Probably, yeah.
When the weather's nice, I do the odd bit of fishing on the loch. Perhaps you'd care to join
Oh,
me?
he's such a simp.
The amount of autistic energy from this man.
It's a blue monolith.
Hello. Have you seen a rather surprised young lady?
Haunt thee, foul-fanged spirits of the glass.
Not just yet, if you don't mind.
This is very like New Who.
Must be.
That scene was very New Who, wasn't it? It's just like, hello there.
That, yeah.
Have you seen a frightened young lady?
Quirky things happen.
Yeah.
You sound as irritatingly resolute as another young lady I know very well.
Oh my word, Doctor. Come on now.
Yes. I'm not going on some joyride, you know.
But Doctor, I don't care about the risk. I just want to travel in your time ship. Please, you must take me.
Absolutely not. Please.
Stop simping.
No.
God, this is hilarious. Some person wants to be a companion, he's like, no, fuck you. Ah.
See, that is fairly well set up, considering what Perry said earlier about reflections, so... Without that, it probably would have just felt random. Just like, aha, a mirror.
Don't worry about the Borad. I'll deal with him, make no mistake. I show little mercy to time meddlers.
Hey, I like that reference.
Or get in my way. I'll lock you up until all this is over. Is that understood? Yes.
No breathing.
Whoa.
We're going back to Drugland.
This is where they grow crystal.
Where Perry's learning to vape Nash.
Yes, and this is upstairs is crystal meth and downstairs is marijuana.
For assistant Eirich. I would hate to have her put to death.
Why is
Thank you.
everyone so I was about to say, why is everyone so fabulous? But it's really only these two. Everyone else is so wet.
Prepare the time lash.
Oh, I love that line. Prepare the time lash.
Ah, yes. Well, you shouldn't believe everything that people tell you, Doctor.
You gave me your word, you microcephalic apostate. I demand to see the Borad immediately.
That's my favourite line in the story.
You microcephalic apostate.
Save your breath for the time lash, Doctor.
Ooh.
People depart with a scream.
I love the way he
Talking
says.
about art.
I love the way Paul Darrow says time lash.
We were talking about R rolling earlier, the way he rolled his R on scream.
Bye, Doctor. Unpleasant journey.
Unpleasant journey. The time lash.
Out through the motorway from the city again.
Well, this is gay.
So that's episode 1 of Timelash.
Yeah, I think it could be better. I'll say that much.
Yeah, time. It's weird. Like, it has all these like campy moments that are entertaining, but like, sort of like in their own isolation. sprinkled in this story that's just
there's this really interesting authoritarianism that's set up at the start, and like the dynamic, I was like really getting into it, and then he fucking just kills the dad straight away. And then that part of the story ends, and then you get to the time travel parts of it, where they go back in time, and there's that whole funny scene where he goes into that. I don't know if I learned his name or not, but it's the boy with the glass that moves on the table with the cards.
Herbert.
Yes. The doctor comes in and he's just like, "Hello there. Have you seen a frightened woman?" It reminded me a lot of not only Tom Baker, but some of the New Who doctors as well. I can imagine a lot of them doing that.
Yeah.
Just be like, assuming that it's a normal situation to ask about. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of...
Might seem like a stupid question, but is anything from the sky lately? It's kind of like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, there are moments of camp, like, sprinkled in this story that's just so, like...
I mean, Paul Darrow is the best thing about it. He's brilliant.
Yeah. It's just kind of mid so far, like, it's...
Yeah, I think it's more...
Like,
I think it's kind of disappointing, because it's like a really interesting idea, actually. The fact that, like, there's this authoritarian society where that you have a man who's willing to hope that his wife can overcome her illness without treatment because he's abiding to his leader, and then his leader kills him. You have, like, characters that are willing to completely... It's not even backstabbing, it's literally front stabbing. You're just lying straight to people's faces until you get what you want, and then you don't even keep your promises. And there's this whole thing of, like, when you get in prison, you get thrown into a time lash, which seems to be some kind of bizarre time travel prison that's really odd.
It's basically you being exiled.
Yeah, you're being exiled and you're just thrown into the vortex, and you almost become like a time ghost in a way.
Yeah.
Like a spirit just wandering around, but without consent and without control.
I don't know if I'd say there's, like, tonal whiplashing. It's not really tonal whiplashing, because, again, like, there's moments of comedy, but then, like, the story itself
I think it's I don't think it's tonal whiplash. I think it's just maybe a bit stuffed.
Yeah.
This kind of...
Very...
It's funny because I mentioned New Who before, but it kind of reminds me, not to the same extreme level, but it kind of has that overstuffed nature that you get in some of the recent New Who.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's you almost kind of wish that it would play more with the time travel thing.
Yeah, I like that they tried to have something to do with Perry's botanist thing, and I like how they set up that there was that plant. Like, it was the android was mechanically designed to try and stop her from touching the plant so that she'd end up in some kind of terrible trouble. But then, because she learnt that when she was being hunted down by a dangerous threat, she used the plant against them, which was, you know, a good bit of setup and payoff for that, I guess. And there's this also that kind of that underground, I guess you could call them like a rebel group as well, that Perry is with, that are being threatened by the, I guess you call them beekeepers. That's what they look like.
Yeah, I call them the beekeepers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just there's just a lot going on, and it's
yeah, and there's not really enough fleshing out, I'd say.
Yeah,
it's like we introduce a bunch of elements we don't really like.
Like that was a very, very quick 45 minutes.
Yeah,
I was kind of surprised at how fast it went by.
Yeah,
and actually, you know what? I'm actually going to say I think Timelash would fit right in with New Who, I think. Especially, like, Moffat and Chibnall. I feel like this story would fit right in with that kind of writing style.
Yeah. I mean, I say it doesn't play much with the time travel elements. There are bits in this second part that do experiment a bit more with it, and you'll see.
Oh yeah, there's also the fact that this is, like, the Doctor revisiting somewhere that he's been before. And they have the bit where, like, he talks about 1 or 3 regenerations ago, which is obviously, I know it's Pertwee because there's the picture later, and obviously the Joe Grant thing as well. Perry, and we learned that Perry has been told about things like, and actually that's another bit of setup and payoff, is the fact that in the TARDIS she mentions that she knows about the Daleks, even though we've never seen her meet them, And so when later on, when she says, "Oh yes, that's Joe Grant," you were like, "Well, she knows about the Daleks, so maybe she knows about Joe too." So like, it's kind of like a
And of course, she knows about the Eye of Orion as well, because the Doctor was waxing lyrical about
yeah,
that.
yeah. So yeah, I
it makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's only a couple of things that I really would criticize, mainly in terms of the storytelling in this, is that obviously in terms of some of the visuals, like the cave worm thing that Perry encounters is just so fake and poorly designed. But I find those kind of designs charming anyway, in a sort of almost, I don't know, if I was like a kid watching a paper mache show, I'd probably find that really charming. So,
same for the Bandrels.
Yeah, the Bandrels too. Yeah, the Bandrels' voices are really funny. And there was that really flamboyant, rap battle, I'd call it, between Paul Darrow's character and the Bandrel. It's like, it seems we are at war, and it seems that your planet is starving.
I like how he ends the call just by being like, good.
Yeah. It's very petty. I think the Doctor they're really, really pushing the Doctor's, like, not giving a shit about Perry's safety to the limits here. It's not quite as out of character as the Twin Dilemma, but it is definitely on the edge. Like, I don't really buy that he trusts them.
Yeah, like, it's weird because they're trying to do this ultimatum, like, you do this thing for us and and nothing will come to Perry. But he doesn't really seem to give a shit about that. It's like, well, yeah, Perry, but I'm also doing it for the people. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
and then when
Perry's such an afterthought.
Yeah, but then when Paul Darrow says, "Actually, I was lying," he's like, "No!" And it's almost like he's more disappointed that he was lied to rather than Perry's going to be in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's really irritating because they, like, in previous stories, and especially the one after this, I think you can see the Sixth Doctor is really starting to care more about her, and he's shaking off that sheen from the Twin Dilemma. Like, when you watch Revelation of the Daleks, there is that point in, I think it's in part 2, where he's on like a video call to Perry, and he's just like, "I will save you, Perry." But I think that what they're doing in this story is kind of backpedaling, and it's almost like Glenn McCoy only saw the Twin Dilemma and thought, "Yep, that's what we're doing. I'm going to follow up on that." And I almost feel this is probably not the smartest move to make in terms of marketing, but I think that it would have been smart if Timelash had come right after. But in terms of just purely character progression, it would make more sense if Timelash was before Attack of the Cybermen and after the Twin Dilemma.
Yeah,
in terms of
as much as I don't really care for like Six and Perry's relationship, this is really oddly placed. Like, especially after the Two Doctors, when he's like, like how the Two Doctors ends like, "No, I think we're gonna go on a vegetarian diet." Like, he says it in such a caring way, and then the story is like,
and they're actually,
I don't give a shit.
They actually have some quite like charming banter in the Mark of the Rani as well. Like, they're really starting to become friends again after the change. Because they became friends when he was the Fifth Doctor, but they're kind of rekindling that friendship again in Mark of the Rani. And like you said in the Two Doctors, it's like, we're going on a vegetarian diet. So it just seems like Timelash is backpedaling back to where they were at the start of the season, and it's unfortunate. But I think also that may not have been the smartest decision, because you would have had 2 of the most unpopular Sixth Doctor stories in a row if you'd done that.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
I mean,
but I actually am quite enjoying this story outside of my a few iffy things. I mean, it's
also
not that
the villain wants to boink Perry, which we'll find out more about in part 2. But
yeah, I'm not disliking it. I think it's alright so far.
Yeah, I'm not hating it either. It's just kind of washing over me, and I'm like, okay, this is a story.
It's not quite as fun as Antonio advertised, I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm kind of being let down. Like when you hear about like these car crash episodes, like The Time Monster, or what's another example? Something like Horns of Nymon, or...
See, I love both those stories you mentioned.
Even the Armageddon Factor, like, you hear about like these like nightmarish like stories that, and you go into them, they're at least like campy and enjoyable. And like Timelash has elements of that, but like the plot is mostly just kind of there, and it's kind of a shame.
Well,
I know some people will probably disagree with me on that.
Well, I actually argue that the Time Monster and the Armageddon Factor are unironically good, and the Horns of Nimon works because it's like kind of a self-aware parody. Timelash is more just middling, I think. This is quite an average story that has a few flaws in terms of its production and some of the out-of-character stuff, and that it's also bolstered by the fabulous acting by people like Paul Darrow and whatnot. I think it's more so like, yeah, the main issue I'm having with this story really is that it's overstuffed, but it's not as bad as some of the stuff we've gotten. Like, you know, it's not like Flux levels of overstuffed, or it's not you know, like Magician's Apprentice levels of overstuffed. This is very much just like a yellow flag level of overstuff rather than a red, to use an analogy that's recent in our conversations.
I can vibe with that.
Yeah. But you know, like, but definitely not worthy of being shit on yet. But we'll see how part 2 goes. Are we ready for part 2 of Timelash?
Down the motorway, into the bright city lights.
I don't care what anyone says. This opening slaps hard. It's so exciting. It's the 80s Doctor Who theme is just so exciting and hype. It's like the Murray Gold Series 4 one. It's just so hype and exciting and energizing. But the Murray Gold one's very sort of like epic and of like bombastic sort of orchestral way, whereas the 80s one is like in a very fabulous, colourful way.
Peter Howell's theme tune is my favourite, so yeah. It's my favourite theme tune overall.
Paul Darrow is just so good. I now know what all the hype's about, and now I want to watch Blake 7.
No, not the tinsel.
That music.
Timelash might have one of Classic Who's worst scores. I don't like.
Right. It sounds like an arcade game. Yeah, it sounds like 16-bit, if you know what I mean. Oh no!
Where are you taking me?
You'll see.
Oh my god, this is very sexual.
Yeah, this story is not very flattering for Perry.
This is like next level kink for her.
Like, I'm not even a fan of Perry, and even like I'm like, oh gosh, she doesn't. This is just ridiculous. She doesn't deserve this level of treatment.
You sound like the people that stan Martha Jones but hate Series 3 because of how it treats her.
See what you mean, Emma.
I'm sure I'm sure the Timelash won't break that rope.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I know the story is self-aware that it's treating Perry like shit, but like still. And it's like, oh god, another instant where Perry gets...
Oh yes, I've seen this. This reminds me of that bit from the Keys of not the Keys of Maris, the Rescue, where there's those spikes on the wall.
Yeah, I see what you mean by that.
For some reason, when I listen to the One Doctor, I think of this set.
Who knew that the inside of like a time corridor looks like this?
Yes, interesting. They look almost like well, is that meant to be like gems?
Yeah, he needs the Contron crystals. For reasons that I'm sure he'll explain later.
This, you know, for some reason this reminds me of like a bag of like Mentos or something.
See what you mean by that, yeah.
Oh, actually, no, not Mentos. You know, like those lollies they're called like smokers.
Alright.
They're like those ones you bite. They're called smoker lollies, and they're like those long white sticks, and you bite into them, and they have like a minty flavor. And they're like really old fashioned. And they're supposed to get people to stop smoking.
Oh, I'd feel, if I were Colin though, I'd feel horribly concerned about the stability of that thing.
As you can see, Paul Darrow has designed this time lash with fabulous glitter.
This is the most 80s looking thing in all of 80s Who.
Yeah, I reckon this would look pretty good in black and white, actually.
Oh no, he unconvincingly slipped.
Yeah, it looks like he pushed himself.
I suppose, like, the people being pushed in don't, like, twat themselves on the way down. Oh no, it's another moment that enters my head whenever I think of Perry. Just in bondage against railings.
Yeah, and that character wants to rail her, am I right?
Yeah. Canonically. I mean...
Yes, I would do it. Now this is very much like the Daleks, when that person's hanging from that rope. Except this time, he's not going to cut the rope. I feel like there's a penis joke there that could be made.
Huh.
They're all being held up by erect penises. Sir, if you want your life saved, please hang on to my limp penis.
If you were to die, I don't think anybody would notice the difference.
Oh. That's an Eric Saywood line right there. Ah. Hardwired.
He is a wobot.
That's a nice twist there. I was thinking it was going to be something a bit more like the Macro Terror, but it's not that exciting.
Yeah.
Because the Macro Terror has the person speaking it. There is no such thing as Macra!
Yes.
Oh, we got the crystal meth.
Yes, of course. This story is all about drugs, really.
Yeah, the story is thematically about drugs.
Man, that woman that was sitting next to the sex doctor is beautiful. The one that was, I said that she was going to dom Perry in the last episode.
Yeah.
Pardon my heterosexuality.
I mean, the story has a lot of it, so...
Can't you speak, Dumbo?
Dumbo?
Help!
It sounds a lot funny when Donna says Dumbo.
Yeah.
Seems a bit sudden.
But you're the perfect choice. You have the right attitude.
You have the right attitude. This dude's... Paul Darrow's character is such a gaslighter.
Yeah. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
He must be dealt with.
No!
I have been faithful to you.
Here we go.
Time for another flop.
You're still hurting me.
You're still hurting me!
Perry just can't catch a break.
I think I have to say, I reckon Susan's hysterical stuff is a lot funnier than Perry's.
Yeah.
Like, cause I don't know what it is about Susan, but she's just so funny when she's screaming.
Well, probably because Carol Ann Ford's screaming sounds like she's orgasming. It's like,
Barbara! You see those faces? It's disgusting!
Then she buries her face in Jacqueline Hill's bosom.
Yeah. It's quite alright, Susan. It's quite alright. You'll be okay. Oh, Barbara! It was awful!
Yeah, this is a rare story that... See, there is some time travel thing in here. There is some time travel experimentation. But it's not as nuanced as, say, something like City.
Yeah, J&T does look like a good damsel woman, doesn't he? Colin Baker's got a very specific smile, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Now, that is interesting. Whoa!
I wonder if anyone's tried
What?
syncing that up to the shoves.
I think the camera angles are too different. You could do a split screen though.
I have turned this one into a 10-second time break.
For some reason, his delivery there made me think of Hartnell. Like, I have turned this into a 10-second time break. He just needs a after that.
You? We saw an image of you.
That's right.
The image of a doctor becomes itself a doctor.
I feel like this guy, if he was living in our time, he'd be a big fan of anime.
Big old anime.
Yeah, I feel like he'd be a weeb. And he'd go around his university with his books in his hand. He's just like, have you ever read the works of Karl Marx? Well, I found part 1 very engaging. So there you go. What are you going to do about that?
Will that be your...
Fuck, that woman is so beautiful. Look at her lips. Gorgeous.
I mean, simping is a theme of this story.
Pardon my simping. Perry's having a rough old time.
It's like, come on, Perry.
Holy mackerel, it actually works!
Of course it did.
I like how much of a fucking nerd this guy is. Oh, there we go. There's John Pertwee.
So that android was sent back to the cave where we saw the burning android in episode 1.
I've never seen that before.
That's me.
You've changed a bit.
Immeasurably for the better, it seems. Strange how you forget what you used to look like.
Oh, shut the fuck up. Pertwee's of Chad.
And way better than 6E, honestly.
There's some people that would disagree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Not you.
I don't know what it is.
Face she did.
I don't know what it is, but like when Perry is treated like shit in something like Caves of Androzani, I find it really compelling. Or even in like Vengeance on Varos. But when it's something like this, it's very just like, oh. I can't pin down like why I find it engaging in other stories, and in other stories I just find it like frustrating. And
I mean, the thing is, there's other Colin stories where I think it's done better than this too. Like, I really like, I think it's really fun, like her thing with Shockeye, the way he wants to like carve her up and eat her, and then it gets denied by his superior. I think it's just kind of, it's a bit repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
With Perry. There's lots of like literature jokes in this. This reminds me of the lighting from The Visitation. When the pterodactyls have that green lantern. There we go.
Neither have you, Doctor.
There he is.
I actually really like that design.
Yeah.
Looks cool. And here's a hot take. I think that his design looks genuinely better than Two-Face from Batman Forever from 1995.
How'd you do?
How'd you do?
So polite.
How'd you do?
How'd you do?
I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, it's trying to play it as like this, not big emotional moment, but like this big like meaningful moment to the Doctor. But like, because we've never seen it before, it's sort of like hard to translate like effectively, I guess. I don't know.
But Will, what about Padma Sambhavar though?
That's done better than this.
Oh yes, my old friend Padma Sambhavar.
At least with Padma Sambhavar, he doesn't like exposit like what happened there last meeting.
Idiot.
Flop.
Betrayal. There goes Paul Darrow.
Time. I don't know whether to be impressed or disgusted.
I've heard that line before.
What I don't understand is how you intend to populate this planet with little borads when you don't even have a mate.
Oh, right. Airy.
The Mustakozi not only excites the creature, but will in turn destroy it.
Wait, what? Does that fucking worm thing get her aroused? Is that what he said?
And your ability to regenerate will be of no assistance to you.
Yeah.
He's using the time thing. That's really overpowered. Thinking about it.
Tricked yourself.
That's murder.
Oh, that's a picture of the planet Uranus. Yeah, I deliberately pronounced it differently, so
Uranus, more
I
like.
could avoid the joke. Yeah.
So that's the Satisfyer Pro dinosaur worm, is what I've decided.
Oh, come on. She can run. She can run in so many directions. It's
Someone
just like,
give
oh,
that girl a
no.
hand. Now maybe she like her body is seized up because she's just too aroused by that worm. Bored can't do foreplay, so he's getting someone else to do it for him. That's what he was planning.
It's treated so much like an afterthought, isn't it? Just like, oh yeah, they literally triggered a war.
I am, in fact, President of the High Council of Gallifrey. Destroy me, you'll have more than a petty war.
Of course he is. I forgot about that.
Then there is little we can do.
There is little we can do. It's weird that these people that are sending a fucking missile to blow up, commit war are so sensitive speaking. There is nothing we can do.
Hello.
Hello. What are you doing here?
I come to help. At least I can experience the adventure.
Oh my god, this guy's so just
She's a girl.
nosy.
Work for men.
Oh, here we go. Of course he'd say that. This guy's an incel. That's what he is. He's an incel. He thinks that being a real man isn't what it is.
So would every other Time Lord from here to Gallifrey, and I can assure you, they're not all as pleasant and agreeable as I am.
Sorry.
That's a Star Wars line. The Emperor is not as forgiving as I am.
To be perfectly frank, Herbert, when I go, thoughts of you will be very low on my list of regrets.
Oh my god, this is so funny.
Shut up.
That's a gift.
This guy has no idea. He's no idea that he's being annoying. He's completely unself-aware. He is an incel. He can't see that he's the problem.
I suppose if it saves millions of lives, it's worth sacrificing too. Isn't it, Doctor?
He's the most annoying, like, good-hearted person to ever exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he completely means well, but he says it in the most fucking uncharismatic way, and it's completely, like, the Doctor's just so annoyed. Not only is he an incel, but he's like a Karen as well. I have a word with the manufacturers! Oh my god, he's so, like, sensitive as well. He's only just met him. Whoa. That looks like the Hartnell sequence.
No, 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 no.
Yes, I just want to be alone for a little while.
That's also a Star Wars line. I just want to be alone for a little while. Wait, what?
Yeah.
He's not dead?
Show yourself to Perry. If she doesn't scream, the wedding can take place.
What? Is he asking you to strip naked? Borad, show us your tits and I'll tell you.
Don't I have a say in all this?
Of course not, be quiet. Why won't you?
I shall. When
You're nothing, Borad. Just a self-degenerated mutation. You're finished, Borad. Your reign of terror is over. Nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. Nobody cares.
Oh my god, this story really is about incels, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody wants you. You are so ugly. Oh, is he meant to be like the Loch Ness Monster or something?
Yep.
Oh wow.
Even though we already have
Wow,
that
the
in Doctor Who, but whatever.
Yeah, but the Timelash has explained how it got there. This is H.G. Wells before he became famous, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew H.G. Wells was such an incel?
So that... yeah, I guess so.
That's my main takeaway from this story. Is that H.G. Wells as an incel?
that's
There you go.
Timelash.
That was Timelash.
It's a story. I don't really know how to feel about it.
So let's talk about the morals. Let's talk about the morals of the Doctor saying that a man is undesirable
Yeah.
and will never find love because he's just fucking ugly to look at.
Oh.
And it wasn't even his fault, was it? It was an experiment he did and it went wrong.
Like, that should be the focus in itself, but the Doctor seems to zero in so much on, you look like shit.
Yeah, because even if it was something as cheesy as, what's really ugly about you is not the way you look, it's the way you are on the inside. Like, at least that would be a lot more moral than...
Yeah, because he's like, oh, you're so
than
ugly.
what this
But
is,
also,
right?
Like, and he sort of says, like, oh, you're not going to win her over with your charm. He sort of treats that as, like, a side thing. Like, the main issue is the fact that he looks ugly.
Yeah. It's almost like it's like he's bullying him. That whole last scene where he puts him to the Timelash right before he's about to fucking go into the most miserable part of his life as the Loch Ness Monster. The Doctor just straight up just like, no one will ever love you. No one will ever think you're beautiful because you are an ugly man. Like this sort of thing. It just fucking pushes him in. It kind of... This story kind of fits exactly what I mean about the Colin Bacon era being like immoral entertainment. A lot of what I like about this story in terms of entertainment is very immoral.
And it's like, oh, he wants to force this woman to be interested in him, but then it's like, oh, the woman's opinion itself doesn't matter. It's just the Doctor's say, I guess.
Well, in that sense, the Doctor wasn't. I don't think he was being genuine. I think he was just like kind of lying so he could have control over the negotiation.
Yeah, it is just funny. It's like, do I have a say in this? Oh, of course not. Be quiet.
I don't. No, the Doctor wouldn't enforce Perry into an arranged marriage.
I know.
Like
I know.
that. Like that.
I know.
Yeah.
It is just very. It's like that. Like, you know that other Doctors would be more sensitive about that, but Colin is so I don't give a fuck. It's like, oh yeah.
I can't imagine the Fifth Doctor saying, "No one will ever love you. You are too ugly. Fuck off." I think that morally speaking, it has a bit of this kind of fits into the same category that some of the 13th Doctor Chibnall stuff does too, where it's like him having these morals isn't the way it's presented. It's not presented as being like really. I don't want to sound like I'm oversimplifying it or anything, but the story doesn't portray the Doctor's views this way as complicated. It's almost like the Doctor saying that someone is unlovable is true, and you know what I mean. It's kind of got a similar thing to that they do with the 13th Doctor and some Chibnall stuff, where you get stuff like her, you know, letting Space Amazon off the hook, and you know, letting a spider suffocate, or putting Tim Shaw in a forever chamber, and it's, you know, it's like, Graham, that's the most heroic thing you could ever do.
What do you think of them trying to weigh so much like emotional stakes on like us on like trying to convince us that the Doctor's about to die, trying to convince us that he did die, and then he just comes back and doesn't explain how he survived? What do you think about that?
I feel like they could have tied in the you know, the thing that with like the is it like time displacement, you know, that thing he did where he was able to walk around and it not be in sync with his body.
Yeah.
They could have done something with that. They could have explained that. Like they basically did that with the TARDIS, where he put the TARDIS out of sync with the explosion. Because that actually ties into other continuity as well.
Yeah.
If they had done that.
He doesn't really explain it. Unless this is like some Stephen Moffat level big brain thing where it's like, oh, I don't need to explain it. Which it isn't.
No. I could totally headcanon it that it's the TARDIS is out of sync with that, but that's retroactive. That's me writing for the writer, you know. Claire McCoy and Eric Saywood should be, you know, clarifying this. And not just being like, this is a story for another time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they never get they never get like an opportunity to actually explain that in the future. Maybe in Big Finish they did, but not in the TV show.
as for characters, I don't know. There's the only really notable characters are the Borad, H.G. Wells, and
I have to say, one thing I was a bit disappointed with was how quickly Paul Darrow's character turned on Borad.
Yeah.
And that's just like his death scene. Like, it was very sudden. It was just like he was completely subservient to him, and then as soon as he had one disagreement with him, he kills him.
Yeah, it's very like, oh shit, we have this like loose cannon in this story that we don't know what to do anything with. Let's just kill him.
And I almost think that Paul Darrow's character was actually a more interesting villain than the Borad himself.
Oh yeah, God yeah.
Even though I do like the Borad's design, and I like his sort of backstory that he gives, but it's very expository.
Yeah, it's very expository and relies a lot on like here's this unseen adventure you didn't see, which again, that's not necessarily a problem in itself, it's how you handle it, but because it's done in a very expository way, it can be alienating and very...
There's sometimes in the show, you don't get this all the time, but very rarely you get stories where they do an unlikely comedic interpretation of a historical figure, and they do it here with H.G. Wells, and you don't find out it's H.G. Wells until the end, but they foreshadow it with some of the things he was doing at the start.
Yeah.
And the fact that his name was Herbert.
And I think Morlocks is something H.G. Wellsy as well, so that's foreshadowing as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like in the Shakespeare Code, how William Shakespeare is a very unlikely version of who he actually would be, but it's done for comedic value. Except personally, I think Shakespeare's done better than Herbert, but a lot of people would disagree with that because that story's much like Timelash in the Colin Baker era. The Shakespeare Code is quite a bit of immoral comedy, not all of it, but some of it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's better handled. But I think like the best way I can describe Herbert is that him being annoying is entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
But I can see why someone would think that he's just annoying and not entertaining. But the thing is that that's something that the story is self-aware of, and that's why the Doctor wants to like tell him to shut up. Because he's completely... Firstly, he's a massive incel and doesn't respect women or anything. But he's also a massive nerd, and he's not self-aware. And that's where a lot of the sort of humor comes from, is that the Doctor keeps on telling him problems that are to do with him, and he's not able to pick up on that. He's not able to pick up on the fact that he is the problem, and he's just assuming, oh, well, I'll help you fix that if you like. And he's got this like really jovial, optimistic, almost I don't want to diagnose because I'm not a doctor, but I know some people that are on the spectrum that are like Herbert in this story, that are very optimistic about everything and can't see the negatives, and they're not self-aware enough to see it. And that was quite charming, I thought. But it's kind of funny how it's like, I don't know, like, Herbert has like a bit of a... Not inherently unlovable or undateable nature, but he has a sort of... His just sort of lack of self-awareness would be very, very... It would be very easy for him to push women away, I guess you could say, or push romantic interests away, because he doesn't have enough self-awareness or respect for women to really understand how to, like, connect with them and understand how they see him. And that kind of, in a way, I suppose that has some connection to the Borad situation, but unfortunately the Borad situation is met with a very, very interesting moral dilemma, where it's all about, look how fucking mutated you are, no one will ever love you, you're so ugly, fuck off to the Timelash now.
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of yikes in a way.
Yeah, so I don't agree with the morals, but I think the immorality gives it an entertainment value.
And it's so when you've got this really underdeveloped side plot that's suddenly thrust into being like the main conflict, it's like, oh, okay then, and and then the Doctor escapes through wanky bollocks basically, and yeah, it's like this of all, like there's been a lot of totalitarian or authoritarian societies in Doctor Who, and Timelash is definitely there's on the spectrum of like most fleshed out to least fleshed out. Timelash is definitely veering towards the not very well fleshed out end of it, because it's just very it's just very there really.
Yeah, I think it's more charming than it is actually interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So really, the main pull of the story is how much you like Eirich Saywood bully humor, basically.
Well, the thing is, the Bandrels they're barely even in it. They're in like 2 scenes.
Oh, yeah, sock puppets.
There's a lot of conflicts that are solved pretty quickly without much tension.
Yeah, like the Doctor made a point of being like, oh, if you destroy me, then you'll have the Time Lords to answer for. And then when the Bandrels think they've killed the Doctor, and they're just casually like, oh, we'll apologise to them. It's like, dude, the Doctor literally just spent so much. The Doctor made a point of building up like what the ramifications you'd face for killing him, and then you essentially did kill him, and it's just shrugged off like, oh, oops.
And these Bandrels are supposed to be like, they're like generals in charge of a war, right?
Yeah.
Intergalactic conflict, or interplanetary, or something like that.
Yeah. Frontier.
And they're just like, oh no, it's we will apologize.
Yeah, Frontier in space. This isn't. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, but my prison cells, though.
Oh yeah, my prison cells. Therefore, it's bad or something.
Speaking of prison cell, let's talk about Perry.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some positives to say in part 1, but I think
they remembered she's a botanist, which is cool.
Yeah. But then once
to be fair,
once it gets to the bondage thing,
I was about to say, to be fair, they remember that in Mark of the Rani as well. So like, it's that she's a botanist. But yeah, once you get to the marriage or like forced impregnation subplot or whatever they're going for, it's like, oh, here we go.
He wants to what he wants is he wants to do like a Palpatine and have 2 sides fight each other, obliterate each other, then wipe out the remains, and then start again, ruling on his own land, and breed with someone who will produce some, more species like him.
Yeah.
Which is, honestly, I don't mind that as a villain.
Like motivation.
Plan. I actually think, for as fucked up as he is, and like almost Game of Thrones level of sadistic sexual manipulation and arranged marriage as Borat is, I actually think he's an okay character in terms of what they establish about him. The issue is the morals around the Doctor.
Yeah.
In response to him. That's the main issue I have with it.
It's like, yes, your ugliness is the root of all this. And it's...
Yeah, don't you understand that Perry will never like you?
Why? It's not because you're a dictator who is is executing people willy-nilly. No, it's because you're ugly.
But also, let's be specific about this here. It's not just about, cosmetics. It's that he's a mutation.
Yeah.
Which goes further than just being he's ugly. It's that he's not pure.
Yeah.
He's a crossbreed.
Kind of eugenics commentary there, and not in a good way.
Yeah, and this is because it's funny. I was talking about like eugenics with the 2 doctors being dodgy. I think this goes a step further than that, because like with the 2 doctors, it's very much more like, oh, the androgams will never change. They're not compatible with progressive ideas like augmentation or whatever, and that's dodgy because it's closed-minded. Whereas this is different. This is literally, you are infected. You are it's almost like you are no longer one of us. You are one of them, and no one will ever love you because you are a disease.
Yeah.
And that's really fucked up to say.
And of course, like, this isn't really... I was just gonna say, like, it's just kind of tiresome they have yet another Perry story where she's yet again, like, objectified and, like, subjugated by the villain who wants to boink her. And it's not even, like, in an interesting way, like in Caves of Androzani, where you have, like, some sort of, like, Phantom of the Opera influences, because, Sharazjek is very much like Phantom of the Opera, so, like, there's an interesting dynamic there. With Timelash, it's very much just like... oh, he wants to boink, and Perry's like, no, and then it's
Well, Sharazjek is like a tragedy.
Yeah, Sharazjek is like a tragic character, while Borat is like, yeah, I am a villain and I want to pork.
Because one of the biggest differences is that the Fifth Doctor doesn't hate Sharazjek,
Yeah.
whereas the Sixth Doctor does hate Borat.
And it's just...
And there is, you could theoretically characterize the Doctor as being like this.
Yeah, but it
But
has
you'd have to develop that.
Yeah, it has to be self-aware and explore why he feels like... Because I know, especially nowadays, there's a lot of focus on the Doctor being a moral character. Like, it's a big talking...
I hate that.
Yeah, it's a big talking point on the discourse. Like,
despise it.
oh, the Doctor should always think exactly the way that the audience feels and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, that's not necessarily the case. Like, you can have the Doctor... think some things that are absolutely abhorrent.
I think people are there are some people that have been unintentionally made to think that way by Stephen Moffat.
Yeah.
Even though that's probably not what Moffat wanted.
Yeah, but like you can absolutely make the Doctor think some absolutely misguided or even abhorrent things, but it's gotta make sense and it's gotta be like just internally justified within its own logic. But
yeah, because I don't have an issue with the Sixth Doctor being an immoral person. What I have an issue with is that I don't get how he got to that point.
Yeah. It's like,
and the story doesn't seem to be self-aware of that at all.
Yeah, it's very just like, yep, the Borat. It's similar to Borat.
Like, see, because that's the thing, right? Is that because Perry doesn't question it, it makes her seem out of character.
Yeah.
Like that, I feel like what you should have done is you should have had the Doctor try and convince him that he's ugly, and if Perry like almost try and butt in and say that's not true, but he shuts her up because he needs his plan to work, and then after the Borat is sent into the Timelash, he just says, "But I never believed any of those things you said." You know, it was never about the fact that he was ugly or mutated. It's about the fact that he was going to impregnate with me without my consent.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Something like that, but it's like, no, he got what he deserved because he's ugly. And it's like,
yeah, and that's pretty stupid, pretty morally stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of blame.
So that's the worst thing about Timelash is how it handles the morals.
I don't know if this is like a fair comparison, but it reminds me of that bit in Arc of Infinity where like the Doctor, it's just before Omega like dies properly. It's when the Doctor goes up to like the dying Omega, like dying on the floor of Amsterdam. He's just like, why couldn't you be content to survive as you were? It's like, that's a very stupid thing to say, Doctor. It's like Omega being in an antimatter universe was killing him and making him suffer and stuff. So like, of course he wouldn't be content with that. So yeah, that's a very icky. That's a very icky perspective for you to have, Doctor. And then it's similar with Timelash here. It's like the Doctor is like, oh, your villainy is related to your ugliness, therefore your ugliness is the reason. That's what defines.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's almost like I know this is like it's an outdated and it's really, looking back on it, it's a really, sort of cringy comparison to make, but it's like when people say, it's like when someone like Donald Trump looks at like Rosie O'Donnell, and the things he criticizes about her is that she's fat and ugly rather than her morals and like anything else to do with her. It's just like, I only bully Rosie O'Donnell, and he feels like he's entitled to, because like everyone hates her, like not everyone, but some people hate her because they think she's an annoying person or they disagree with her morals or whatever. But the angle that Trump took with it was that, well, I feel like I can bully her because she's ugly and fat,
Yeah.
And it's maybe not quite the same here, but there's a similarity in that there's a lot of things about Borat that you could want to throw him into the Timelash for if you're that kind of person, but I don't see what has led to the Doctor to believe that it's about eugenics and about attractiveness.
Yeah, the Doctor just latched onto the most surface level thing, and the story didn't really justify it.
Yeah, and like, you know, you could tell a story like that, like the Sixth Doctor being a self-obsessed person who cares a lot about his own beauty and whatnot.
But that doesn't ever come up. It's just very... Oh. It's very matter-of-factly delivered.
Yeah, again, it just feels like Glenn McCoy watched The Twin Dilemma and just thought, oh, well, that's the character.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to really say? Because I think we've explored, oh, Doctor! And we've explored, like, how undercooked everything is and how...
I did think it was really funny how the way that Borad described is that thing in the cave that was scaring Perry is like, it's going to excite her. And I almost headcanon that as in, like, he's trying to prime her for, like, impregnation or something.
Yeah.
It's like a horny cave worm.
There are some interesting, like, time travel elements to the story. Because obviously in episode 1,
you know,
the burning...
Actually, you know what? Before you say that, I was just going to say, I think logically that's almost the opposite, because I think it's, like, this is getting into pretty, like, you know, grotty biology stuff here, but I'm pretty certain that actually reproduction is usually better when the person is relaxed and not super frightened and anxious.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's almost backwards in a way.
But yeah, like there are some cool time travel ideas in there. Like there's that android that appears in the caves in episode 1 that is on fire. It just suddenly appears out of nowhere, and then like in episode 2 they sort of justify that as, oh, the Doctor invented this machine that sent it back in time and is on fire, so that's why that happened. And then he's got that whole gizmo that projects an image of him 10 seconds after he's done it. Like, it's cool concepts to play around with, but
and the Timelash itself.
Yeah, the Timelash itself. It's very an exile type ritual thing. I think it could have just gone more in depth with that, honestly.
I could have gone more in depth with everything. This could have been like a... Well, I mean, if it's 25-minute episodes, this could have been like a 6-parter.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think of something like the Crotons, where like the students going into that machine is kind of treated as like this big societal event. Like, oh yes, they are going into the machine. It's quite it's a moment with a lot of emphasis to it. Whereas like Timelash, it's like, oh, cast him into the Timelash. Like, you think that's something that the story would, especially since it's named after it. You think the story would like give much more focus on it, but it's just treated like any other element of the plot, really.
Yeah, there's not enough drama. I think that's one of the biggest issues with Timelash, is that how the drama's a bit too it's a bit too moderate.
Yeah, like why is this story called Timelash? You could just call it Borad. Like it would have the same meaning. It could be called H.G. Wells is a Pratt, because like there's no real like there's no real emphasis on the Timelash itself in the story. It's very
Yeah, a lot of these very interesting ideas are executed in pretty mediocre ways.
Definitely. It's a story I don't find myself revisiting very often, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I've heard Dylan say about it is the problem with Timelash is that almost everything about it is quite mediocre, from like, you know, the set design to the ideas and how they're executed to the acting to the characterization. Like, it's all very...
Yeah.
It's all very sort of moderate and mediocre, whereas, though I will say, Colin Baker and Paul Darrow are fabulous.
Yeah, like as I said earlier, there's elements of camp sprinkled in there, but the story doesn't, like... The story could save itself if it committed to that, but it just doesn't. It doesn't commit to the camp, it's just... It's not, like something like Horns of Nimon, which does. It's just very... It's
yeah.
Just, it's just...
And also it severely cuts the world building off in the first half, because you have this build up of what this society's all about. You have the whole authoritarian thing, you have the family drama, and you have the setup with the war with the Bandrels, and you have, you know, all those characters and how they all relate to it. But then about halfway through the story, all of the world building gets cut off when the father dies.
Yeah, and there's just no more consideration for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know when the missile is like heading towards the planet and then like it gets blown up and then Perry and the rebels are like, oh my god, they stopped it. I kind of completely forgot that there was a whole society there. I just completely just thought that it was just a room with Perry and the rebels. Like the fact that there was that this is actually part of the society just kind of left my brain. So that's not great world building.
No. Nah.
And I'd say
pretty underwhelming story on the whole, I'd say.
And does it being a sequel to a third Doctor story really add anything? Because I guess that's meant to be world building as well, and even that's not really thoroughly.
One question I have is that how did the Doctor know there was a mirror behind that painting of him?
No idea.
That was very weird.
And obviously the reason why there are no reflective surfaces is because the Borad doesn't want to see himself, which is a bit... Again, that's another element which they don't really seem to focus on too much. It's like, there's so many moments... It's a story that sort of like passively goes through its own story beats. It doesn't really like focus on anything. It's very... Yeah,
it's quite sad how the Borad looking at himself in the mirror and hating himself kind of confirms the biases against him, right? It's almost like he knows that they're right about him being ugly and unlovable. Which is really fucking sad, you know? I almost feel sympathy for him in a way. Which again, like, that would work if it was self-aware. Like, that complexity of a villain with a level of sympathy to them would be really good if it was self-aware. The problem is that the Doctor isn't self-aware. Well, the Doctor being biased against that is
not self-aware,
not really earned in character, and that's not what's self-aware in the story. And you don't have someone like Perry questioning that. She just sort of goes along with it, which is really, I don't like that. Like, I get that she was terrified by what the Borad was threatening to do to her, but I still think that it would have been better if, you know, she had at the very least, disagreed with him. That was the reason.
Yeah.
But then I guess this confirms that Perry is also biased against ugly, mutated people.
I mean, she's not exactly the brightest bulb in the bunch in this story, considering she's, like, cowering against a wall from this dildo snake thing when there's clear, like, places she can run to. It's like, no!
Yeah, and also, I think it's kind of ironic that the third Doctor is on the wall, because remember what he thought of the mutants?
Yeah.
He thought the opposite. He thought that the humans were the ugly ones.
Yeah, exactly. This is like the polar opposite of something like the mutants. Yeah, it's very, very mid shit.
So for the next portion of this review, my guest Will is going to read out the historical and reception, the writer, director, and music, and also the trivia.
And you can react with ooh and ah as I read it out to you. So, Timelash was panned by Doctor Who critics. Guest star Paul Darrow described Timelash as the most disliked and also one of the most liked, which is fascinating.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Graham Slate noted that Timelash is widely regarded as one of the worst series ever broadcast as part of Doctor Who, claiming the story has a weak script, cheap-looking design, unimaginative direction, laughable special effects, and some appalling performances. However,
I don't know if I'd call any... Would you call any of the performances appalling?
I think Paul Darrow and Colin Baker are great. They're fabulous in it. I wouldn't say there's dreadful. There is a lot of wooden performances, especially from.
You know that woman with the mullet hair?
Yeah, the woman who was pushed into the Timelash with the amulet. Oh my god, she's wooden.
Yeah. She's probably the worst one.
Yeah. And obviously there is a lot of mediocre, like, acting from the rebels as well.
I was too distracted by how gorgeous that woman was.
Yeah. Obviously the special effects are pretty, like, as I said earlier.
Tacky.
Yeah.
It's very tacky.
As I said earlier, they're not quite like Underworld levels, but it is like sort of encroaching on that like Invasion of Time ugliness.
Yeah, a bit tacky, a bit tinny. I think Invasion of Time is a bit more garish, though.
Yeah.
That's actually something I will say, is that the design of the story is not as garish as I expected.
Yeah. However, Slate also praises Robert Ashby's performance as the Borad, claiming Ashby's performance elevates his menace to an entirely different level to the rest of the story. I can see that, yeah. Because I guess his characterization is basically just like an internet incel. Well,
Which one are we talking about? Is it Herbert or Borad?
Borad.
Yeah, I like the guy who plays Borad. He does a decent sort of
He has a menacing voice.
rough-voiced villain. Yeah, menacing. That's the word.
Yeah.
And he has a good I like his prosthetics a lot. Actually, I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah. Like, oh god, now I'm just imagining like Borad versus Davros. See, I don't think there's ever been a story where the Doctor has called Davros ugly. That's just kind of incidental to like Davros, whereas like the Borad is defined by how ugly he is. But you know, it's neither here nor there. Tatwood described it as a grindingly.
Well, I think the difference is that I don't think Davros gives a shit that he's ugly.
Yeah. He's like, ew, I am intelligent. I don't need bitches. That's Davros.
He's like, I was disfigured in a war, and I will keep these scars to remind myself of who I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas Borad looks in the mirror and he's just like, get it away! Get it away!
Tatwood described it as a grindingly dull story, only memorable for being made as a school panto with belated new romantic 80s fashion errors. Wood singled out the story script, production, and costumes for particular criticism. Wood also pointed out that H.G. Wells depicted in Timelash is different from the real-life Wells. I don't think that's necessarily
Obvious.
a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I don't mind taking liberties with historical figures in a sci-fi show. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a point to be made about historical inaccuracies in terms of like events that happen, like in the Reign of Terror, for example. But when it comes to taking liberties with historical figures and for fiction, I don't really mind that as much.
It depends on what you do with it, and it can go like Winston Churchill in Victory of the Daleks. It can go wrong, but doing it in itself isn't inherently an issue. In the discontinuity guide, Timelash was criticized.
I love the scene in the Shakespeare Code where, you know, the Martha has an expectation of what Shakespeare's like based on his work, and the Doctor's like, oh, the most brilliant words, and Shakespeare comes on stage and says, oh, shut your big fat mouths!
Yeah.
Instead of something eloquent.
In the discontinuity guide, Timelash was criticised for tacky sets and some dodgy acting, but was also said to be nowhere near as bad as its reputation.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite like bottom tier. I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. Doctor Who the Television Companion noted that the serial was not popular with fans of the show, but was at least a reassuringly traditional Doctor Who adventure in a season which contained derivative, incomprehensible, and inappropriately violent stories. I don't know about that one, Chief. I think Timelash is pretty fucking derivative.
Yeah.
It's very, authoritarian society, rebel forces, Perry's gonna get raped again. It's like it's very derivative. Like, what are you talking about, dude? In Doctor Who the Complete Guide, Mark Campbell awarded Timelash 7 out of 10. I have that book. I think you've reviewed that book on a stream once.
Yeah. Isaac Whittaker-Dakin got us to watch his video of him reading it out.
Yeah.
Some of the takes.
Which had ring in the background throughout.
Yeah.
He ordered Timelash 7 out of 10, describing it as an unfairly maligned homage to H.G. Wells and bad B movies.
Yeah, it had the Delaware theme, didn't it?
Yeah. Timelash
Timelash is very B movie, isn't it?
Yeah. He described it as Timelash is good, old-fashioned entertainment in a season brimming with macho portentousness. It goes all...
Is it me, or does like, H.G. Wells's house, like, look very manufactured? And, like, fake?
I see what you mean by that, yeah.
There's something about it that I can't quite... Something about the direction. Like, there's no ice under the water of the iceberg, you know?
Yeah. Isn't that also...
Although it also reminded me a bit of that house from the start of Amy's Choice as well. Except that's real.
I guess...
That's a real house.
I mean, I guess this is why 80s who tended to not do historicals that often, because with a set like that, maybe they just didn't feel confident doing many historicals.
Well, the thing was, with the Mark of the Rani, they were allowed access to location, which was cool.
Yeah.
And I loved the way Mark of the Rani looks. It's so just... it's a peaceful little village.
It's quite sexy. It all goes pear-shaped towards the end, but on the way there's plenty of fun to be had. I mean, it does go pear-shaped towards the end, but I would not say there's much fun to be had. Again, there are moments.
I think there's some. I think part 1 is quite fun, and I think bits of part 2 are fun.
Yeah. In 2013, the Daily Telegraph's Tim Stanley wrote of the serial, "The sets are bad, the acting is bad, the script stinks, the effects are laughable, and most importantly, Colin's Doctor is simply unlovable."
I wouldn't go that far. I think he has bad morals, but I still think he's a charming person.
Yeah.
I really like and enjoy the Sixth Doctor. I just disagree with some of the writing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just find that they botch a lot of his character by not earning it and developing it properly. And some of the morals are really strange decisions and choices.
Yeah, like Colin's era. Like I know this is a basic bitch take by Classic Who standards, but I do think Colin's era is Classic Who's worst. Because it is the least well constructed and least well thought through. And there's just a lot.
Yeah, I can definitely buy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen enough season 24 to make a judgment on that or not.
Would I rather watch season 24 over the Colin era as a whole? I don't. Because obviously the Colin era has higher highs than season 24, but it also has much lower lows in my opinion. But I know many people who will probably disagree with me on that.
Yeah, again, I'd have to see all of season 24 to make a definitive statement. But also, that being said, you know, I think season 26 is one of the best of Classic Who, so I think I'd still maybe even say McCoy, even if 24 was terrible.
Yeah, definitely. Den of Geeks Andrew Blair selected Timelash as one of the 10 Doctor Who stories that would make great musicals. Okay. Patrick Malkin of Radio...
it certainly has some fabulous atmosphere to it.
Patrick Malkin of Radio Times awarded the serial 1 star from 5, describing it as a turkey that's also a hoot. In his view, the serial was Codswallop served cold. I hate how British all these people are. Codswallop served cold. Boring TARDIS scenes are intercut with stultifying political machinations on Carfel.
What was that reviewer that called the Hordes of Nomon turgid?
A drab planet ruled by a lethargic lizard man and about to be obliterated by glove puppet bandrels. Alright, fair enough. I mean, the production values are like one of the most infamous things about this story, but like if the story were good, that would be easy to look past. It's the fact that the story itself is kind of ass. So
little bit.
So about Glenn McCoy. He had a spell with the London Ambulance Service when he was 19 and became one of the early batch of paramedics. It was during this time that he wrote Ambulance. I don't know if that was a show or book or whatever, published by David and Charles. I don't know who those are. As a television scriptwriter throughout the 80s and 90s, McCoy's credits include Angels, Emmerdale, EastEnders, and other soap operas. He's also
That's really interesting. But
he's also a
I wouldn't
business
call
coach.
Timelash I wouldn't call Timelash an ambulance soap opera myself.
Nah, God, he's kind of out of his league there.
I mean, maybe he worked in the hospital so long and saw so many grotesque, like, injuries and like gore that he decided to make a Doctor Who villain inspired by those patients, which would be really sad if it's true.
Pennant Roberts directed the story. He previously directed The Face of Evil, The Sunmakers, The Pirate Planet, and Sharda in 72, which all look phenomenal. But in 82,
including The Sunmakers, right? Hot take. Sunmakers looks good.
Oh yeah, I think The Sunmakers looks pretty good for what it is. I know Dylan's like, no, it looks dodgy. But in 82, he also directed Warriors of the Deep, which,
Yeah, but to be fair, he had a big disadvantage against him on that one. They had to rush that so much more than they would have had it not been for Maggie Thatcher's bullshit.
Yeah. So it's cool that they gave him a second chance with Timelash, but I don't think he really showed.
Yeah, I don't think he had any excuses this time.
Yeah, I think he.
Well,
I think it was just past his
apart
prime at this point.
Apart from budget, though.
Yeah. The music.
I mean, I wouldn't say that the direction and the like production values are as much of a colossal fuck up as Warriors of the Deep. They're not, but then again, it's also not as funny as Warriors of the Deep.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just sort of like, oh, that's a cute little bit of like a sock puppet and paper mache, whereas Warriors of the Deep is like so horrendous that it's a hoot.
Yeah. The music was done by Elizabeth Parker, who also did some special sound effects for the Stones of Blood, I guess. That's what it says here.
I wonder if she did the sound effects for like when the stones light up.
Trivia. Oh, this is the bit you copy-pasted from TARDIS Wiki. This serial makes several references to H.G. Wells' novels The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man, and The Island of Dr. Moriu. I don't know how you pronounce that.
I could tell they were references, but I couldn't tell what they were because I'm not aware of the works.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I'm aware of War of the Worlds, but that's about it.
Maybe it's a bit like the Myth Makers, and if you have read his works, you'll understand the references properly.
Ah. Oh, another bit about Elizabeth Parker. She did special sounds for Blake 7 as well. I guess.
Oh yeah, Paul Darrow, obviously,
Yeah.
for the leads of Blake 7.
Well, in my opinion, her music for this story is utter ass, so,
Sounds like a 16-bit arcade song.
yeah. The story was broadcast in 4 25-minute episodes in the USA, Australia, your home country, Canada, the United Arab Emirates, and Germany. Part 1 ends with the Doctor and Perry arriving on Carfel and exiting the TARDIS, while Part 3 ends with Perry being attacked by the Morlocks. Huh.
Okay.
I don't know if... I think the Part 3 cliffhanger, fair enough. The Part 1 cliffhanger... Yeah, Episode 1 doesn't really... Like... It's weird. I don't think season 22 is particularly constructed to be divided into 22-minute episodes.
No, it's not.
Like
not at all. That's why in the in the Two Doctors, in the 6-part version, there's this really weird cliffhanger where they say, well, let's gonna walk that way, and then it just cuts.
Yeah. The story was originally submitted as a Dalek adventure, but it was rejected. But Eirich Saywood asked author Glenn McCoy to resubmit it without them.
Ah, yes. So when I did the Terminus review, I thought that Terminus was a rejected Dalek adventure, but it wasn't. But it was Timelash. That's the one.
Yeah.
Got my wires crossed there.
I mean, I guess it makes sense with the theme of mutations, but...
That's true. Well, the Daleks were in the next story anyway.
Yeah. And I can't exactly imagine like the Doctor pushing a Dalek into the Time Lash and calling it ugly because it's a mutant. I don't know.
It's interesting because right after this in Revelation, they discover someone who has like a mutated face, and he feels a lot of sympathy for them.
Yeah. In the
Revelation is. I know you don't like the story, but Revelation is so much better than Timelash. Like,
oh God, yeah. It's no context.
It's like everything about season, like, okay, maybe it's not perfect, but everything that I love about season 22's like positives are in that story, whereas Timelash has quite a few of its negatives and iffy bits.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that they come one after the other.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Revelation, but like it's head and shoulders above this. In the original script, it was going to be the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan who would have visited Carfel, and not 3 and Joe. And a vestige of this remains in the final version of the script because Tekka inquires about the Doctor only having one companion in the finished story. And obviously, like, that line doesn't really make any sense when we discover that it was 3 and Joe who came here before, because 3 and Joe were just one Doctor and one companion, and 6 and Perry are just one Doctor and one companion. So the fact that, like, Tekka points out, oh, you only have one companion this time, it doesn't really make much sense in the final version.
Yeah, they must have... Yeah, they must have been with someone else at the time, but it's never explained, is it?
Yeah, it's weird. The serial was voted into the 199th position by readers of Doctor Who magazine in the 2009 poll. And it landed in the second lowest spot of the final results, just above the Twin Dilemma. I've not read the 2009 poll. I'm more familiar with the 2014 poll.
Yeah. The 2009 poll is very, very harsh on Colin Baker.
Yeah. I imagine so. No date is given for the scene set on Carfel, A History of the Universe, and A History, whatever that is, arbitrarily place it in the year 802701, the same year in which H.G. Wells' The Time Machine is set.
He's got one hell of a story to tell.
When playing the role of Tekka, Paul Darrow purposefully exaggerated his performance as a way of retaliating against Colin Baker's similar portrayal of Baban the Butcher in the Blake 7 episode City at the Edge of the World, in which Darrow starred as Kerr Avon. Darrow stated that he felt undermined by Baker's bombastic acting in Blake 7. So this is a revenge performance, basically.
Well, it worked. Certainly worked in the story's favour, because Paul Darrow is so fun.
In the original scripts, Kat's amulet, I didn't even know that was a fucking name, given to her grandfather by the Third Doctor, was to contain a reference to Gallifrey, and Perry would have identified it as the Doctor's home planet in order to gain Cezanne's trust. But Eirich Say would replace this with a picture. But Eirich Say would replace this with a picture of Joe Grant, which was a publicity still taken during Day of the Daleks.
Another time story as well.
Yeah, interesting that. The script gave
a much better one than this.
The script gave an explanation for the destruction of the Bandrel missile. The bend ellipse was neutralized via contact with the TARDIS's time field to replace it only. Yeah, that's the answer. But in like the final broadcast version, they replace it only with the Doctor's vague assurance that he will explain it to Perry later.
Yeah.
So there's your canonical explanation.
That's a shame. Wait, sorry. Can you read what the explanation was again?
The bend ellipse was neutralized via contact with the TARDIS's time field. Wanky bollocks.
Well, it was somewhat similar to my idea.
In the original script, Malin Tekka undergoes no change of heart and is instead murdered by the Borat in the process of shooting the Doctor. I think that would have made more sense, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like him being backstabbed would have worked better than, being like, actually, I disagree. Then you die.
I mean, I guess it would have still come off as a bit random, because then why didn't he just kill Tekka earlier? But, like, you know, whatever.
Well, you know, you could have had something really flamboyant, like Paul Darrow's character saying, "This is the thing. This is why you never trust anyone and you never tell the truth, because, or something like that, because you never know when they're gonna backstab you, and that's what I've done with you, Doctor." And then fucking bloody what's his name?
Borat
shoots him.
Yeah.
Borat shoots him out of irony, and he's like, "Quite right."
The original script had the Borat reject his earlier inclination of mating with Perry because he can now make as many clones of himself as he desires. That's a fucking point. He can clone himself.
Yeah.
Why does he need to Okay. Let's not...
I suppose he needs like female versions of himself, right? That's probably what's implied by it, is that he needs like he can't, because he can clone himself, but he also needs to have like a society of people that are different and also have like further reproductive abilities beyond just cloning. Because I think the idea is that he doesn't just want to be cloning. I think he also wants to reproduce like a normal person, you know, the natural way. That's my interpretation of that, my inference.
Probably, yeah. Nicola Bryant hated the story because Perry spent a lot of time being tied up and it seemed like a step backwards. She also named the first TARDIS scene as her worst acting performance. Colin Baker felt that it didn't quite gel with him either.
I don't know about that. I don't think it's that bad. I actually, you know what? Something we didn't mention towards the middle of the story. You know, before she leaves the TARDIS and him and Herbert go to do the thing.
Yeah.
There's actually a bit of drama in there that's like almost good.
Yeah, it's almost
between
good.
them.
Yeah,
like you could rework the dialogue a bit, and it would actually work pretty well with the characters. Like, you know, I think the problem is that they're a little bit too heavy-handed with it. Where Perry's like, "It's because I have a caring nature." You know, they're a bit too descriptive about it. I think there's a way you could rewrite that scene and make some pretty good drama that's very fitting of the characters out of it. That shows like how difficult it is to be together because of all the differences they have, but how much they actually care about each other, and that's why they stay together.
Yeah.
But they come very close to pulling that off, but I think the dialogue's maybe a little bit wonky.
Yeah, it's a little too chibnal.
Yeah.
I was worrying about you. Something like that.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. John Nathan Turner wanted Paul Darrow to play Tekka as Avon from Blake 7. Darrow refused and instead played him as Richard III. According to Pennant Roberts, Darrow asked if he could play the part with a hump. Don't know what that means.
Probably some British acting term.
Yeah. Or maybe like a literal hump. Like maybe he wanted him to be like a
humpback.
Yeah. Eirich Say would describe Tekka as a Roman emperor who's been sniffing glue all day.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I describe Eric Saywood as a script editor who's been sniffing glue all day, but here we go. Robert Ashby, who played the Borat, was given leeway to rewrite his own lines. That's nice of them.
That's a bit of creative control.
Stephen Burkoff, Andrew Burt, Tom Chadbon, Michael Gothard, Ronald Lacey, Patrick Moore, and David Warner were considered for the role of Tekka. I think they struck gold.
David Warner?
Yeah. But I think they struck gold with, what's his face? So.
Paul Darrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would have been interesting to see David Warner in this story. Unfortunately, we had to wait until Cold War.
According to Colin Baker,
although even in my perceived classic elitism over Moffat, I don't think this story is much better than Cold War, to be fair.
Yeah. According to Colin Baker, Pennant Roberts was underwhelmed by the script and was disappointed the bickering between the Doctor and Perry was back, but conceded that such scenes were easier to write. Yeah, I side with him on that one. This story might be the reason why I don't gel with Six and Perry that much, because it kind of shoots that journey in the foot when you think about it.
They almost get it right at one point, but it's it's the least successful of season 22 in terms of their characters, I think.
Yeah. It doesn't help that I'm already not a fan of like Attack of the Cybermen and how they act in that one. So
I think they're hilarious in that story. In the first half, it's kind of like, you know, when she's got the high heels on, and it's just like, why aren't you wearing different shoes?
Yeah.
This would be a lot easier for you if you were. And then of course you get the Lytton stuff as well, which does lead to some more, quote unquote, more serious stuff for the Doctor, I guess, to some extent.
According to Eric Saywood, it was John Nathan Turner's idea that this story be a sequel to an unseen Third Doctor adventure. Of course it fucking was.
Of course it was. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that the Seventh Doctor did quite a bit, didn't he?
Yeah. It took 3 hours to get Robert Ashby's makeup on, and he couldn't eat anything during the day.
Is the Face of Evil the best example of doing this? Like the previous adventure that we haven't seen?
I think so, yeah. I'd say so.
Or unless, I mean, I don't know if it technically, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I don't know if it technically counts as the same thing. But like Terra Firma does that as well, and in some sense, but it's more like forgotten memories rather than I've been here before.
There are other stories like that as well, like The Abominable Snowman and Remembrance of the Daleks even. I think The Face of Evil might be the best example.
I mean, because there's examples where they do it, but it actually has been an adventure we've seen, like Bad Wolf, because we actually did see the long game.
Oh yeah. John Nathan Turner took Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant out of rehearsals twice to attend a convention and rehearse his pantomime. Eric Saywood thought this was unfair on the show and that their performances were subpar as a result.
I don't think they were that bad, but I mean, in a professional sense, I think taking people out of work to do business is a bit sad. Like, you should be focusing on the show first and foremost, because those appearances at conventions that fans want to see primarily stem off the merits of the show, and so you should make the show your priority.
Oh god, this is a long one. It became apparent that to Eric Saywood's efforts to correct the lengths of the 2 episodes had been unsuccessful, because part 1 was 6 minutes too long and part 2 underran by 4 minutes. Pennant Roberts suggested simply shifting the cliffhanger back to the Gardelier's attack on the rebels and inserting reaction shots to imply that Perry had been killed instead of Katz. However, John Nathan Turner rejected this proposal. Instead, it was decided to move the scene of the material involving Perry being taken to the Morlocks cave in part 2. Minor scene cuts would then shorten the first installment to its proper length. To prop up the concluding episode, Nathan Turner authorized a remount in order to record extensions to its 2 TARDIS scenes. Saywood wrote the additional material and David Chandler was rehired. Saywood greatly disliked the new scenes. That was a mouthful and I barely even absorbed any of that. Basically, it was a mindfuck to make.
Yeah, I mean, video editing back in those days was torture. And these days we're very spoiled with the software we have.
The Radio Times program listing for part 1 included a small black and white head and shoulders photograph of Paul Darrow as Tekka, while the synopsis misspelled Borad as Bored. And the cast list erroneously credited James Richardson Gardelier as Gardelier. Right, so they missed out the U.
I like that. That's funny.
Okay, in a book called Speed of Flight, it is mentioned that the Third Doctor and Jo are on their way to Carthel, with the reference to the Doctor only having one companion here explained as Captain Mike Yates joining them on their trip. Okay.
Oh, well, there you go then. Mike Yates on a trip. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a Big Finish play where they do that as well. Can't remember which one it's called, but yeah. The never-before-seen safety belts attached to the Doctor's TARDIS console would not be used again, although similar belts were used in the console of the junk TARDIS in The Doctor's Wife.
Oh, yes. I do remember that.
Yeah. The Doctor tells the captain of the Bandrel ship that he is Lord President of Gallifrey, which is, I guess, a neat bit of continuity.
Yeah, I completely forgot that he was. And then I'm like, oh yes, of course, the 5 Doctors.
Yeah. The Borad is implied to be the Loch Ness Monster, conflicting with the Scarrison in Terror of the Zygons. The contradiction is explained when the Borad is killed by the agents of the Celestis in The Taking of Planet 5, which is a book. And the 12th Doctor acknowledges that he is aware of the different monsters he is responsible for in Loch Ness. Fucking expanded media writers. They gotta, like, fix everything even though no one asked them to.
Yeah. They're gonna chain up all those loose ends, right?
Yeah.
Never leave a stone unturned.
One of my favourite ones is in Revenge of the Cybermen. When Voga is in orbit around Jupiter, the Doctor makes a reference to Jupiter now having 13 moons, even though in real life it's close to 70. Obviously, like, back then they thought it was just 12, but like as time's gone on, they've just got more and more moons. But no fear, because some expanded media novel makes it canon that at some point in the future, humanity does a spring cleaning of the solar system and just eradicates all these moons for some reason. Fuck knows why.
So they bring it back to 12 and then they grow another one and it's 13. Or something like that.
I guess, well, they bring it down to 12 and then Voga is caught into orbit around Jupiter. Which is just like, just stop. Doctor Who writers...
That's so contrived.
Like,
so contrived.
Doctor Who writers just accept that sometimes a few details don't sync up. Like, it's fine. We can take that.
Scientific inaccuracies are inevitable with Doctor
Who. Yeah.
You're predicting something you don't know.
To smother the Borad's delusion that Peri will accept him as the monster he is, the Doctor tells him you can't change the brain in her head. Ironically, Peri did get her brain replaced with the mentor Kiv in Mind Warp. That is thematically deep, I guess. But
that's true.
And the last fact, when the Borad said, "You tricked me," and the Doctor counters, "You tricked yourself," it's similar to the later dialogue that would turn up between the Doctor and Davros in Remembrance of the Daleks. Where Davros like, "You tricked me," and then the Doctor's like, "No, Davros, you tricked yourself." That is all the trivia in that document you sent me, so...
Very good. Very good. Give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for Timelash.
Timelash is very mid. 4.5. That's it. That's all I have to say. Because I've already said everything I need to say about the story, so...
Yeah, it's a bit overstuffed. It has some poor morals, and the Peri stuff is very derivative. Some, charming but poor production stuff. Not as bad as some other stories, though.
Yeah.
Underutilized ideas and out of character moments, but still has some charm, some humor, immoral comedy, and some very fabulous performances from the Sixth Doctor and Paul Darrow. And it does. I do think it has a little bit of weird pacing, I'd say.
Oh,
for sure, and that's probably down to the overrunning of part 1 and the underrunning of part 2 in the initial draft. But yeah, no, this story is very substandard, unfortunately. As much as I do like quite a bit of it, and I liked some of the world building in part 1, it's gonna get a 4.5, which makes it my least favorite Colin TV story. I think.
Interesting. I actually dislike
Because I get
the Twin Dilemma more than this, but
I gave Twin Dilemma a 5. I think Twin Dilemma is quite a different story to Timelash.
yeah,
I think what it gets wrong is very different to what Timelash gets wrong.
yeah, because
And what it gets right is very different. I think I'd be willing to say that Timelash may be a bit more fun in some respects.
yeah,
But the Twin Dilemma is... Yeah, I said my piece when I was with Adam Martin with the Twin Dilemma. I said my piece on that one.
yeah. Twin
Is that it's Twin Dilemma has a lot that could have been awesome.
Yeah, Twin Dilemma is aggressively trying to go for this thing, and it doesn't work.
Yeah,
While
I think
Timelash
actually,
is, well,
I think
Timelash just
I think
coasts, and it's very mid.
I think I've pinned it down. I think the reason why Timelash is a bit more egregious is because I think the morals around the ugliness thing, I think, is actually worse than the morals around the Sixth Doctor's post-regenerative trauma.
Fair enough.
I think the post-regenerative trauma is not handled the way that it should be, dramatically speaking. But I think I prefer that over what they do here with the complete lack of self-awareness of him basically just saying to Borat that, no, he's unlovable and ugly and mutated and disgusting, and then pushes him away, which I think is worse, especially because he's not even going through post-regenerative trauma at this point. This is like him in his normal state. So this is, I think the reason why Timelash and its morals is worse, but is probably because it's the kind of, it's more like Chris Chibnall morals rather than, you know, Eric Sayward morals, if you know what I mean. By comparison, this story's morals is a lot more in line with the kind of problems I have with a lot of the Chibnall stories, and for me, those are personally a lot more egregious than the ones that are in the Twin Dilemma.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I give this a 4.5 and give that one a 5. So
and
yes, this is my least favorite column.
And the worst thing is, like, that's the ugliness thing is the thing that the story arguably commits to the most, because everything else in the story, like from the world building to the characterization to the plotting to the way that things, like, to the way that events progress, it's all just done in such a mediocre way and doesn't really get much emphasis. But the ugliness gets a lot of emphasis, and that's really badly handled.
Yeah. And some very sudden dramatic beats that kind of cut off bits of the story that could have been developed.
But it's okay, because the Doctor will explain one day.
One day. It's like that. See, it's like that line from The Force Awakens when what's her face says a story for another time, and she never tells that story.
Yeah.
And you see her in episode 9. I know you haven't seen the films, but in episode 9, in the last one, there's shots of her just standing there, not saying anything, and I'm just like in the theater, like, are you gonna say it? Are you gonna tell us where that lightsaber came from? And she never does.
See, fuck the Doctor saying one day I'll come back to Susan. What we're really waiting for is the Doctor explaining how he survived in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah.
And they don't explain how the Master survived Planet of Fire either.
Yeah, this is a very whatever period of the show, isn't it? Or at least certain stories are very whatever. In how they treat continuity and cause and effect.
Yeah, it's almost like the Master was like, oh, I know how I survived, I'm just not going to tell you.
Is that not frustrating in the slightest?
You'll never know my secrets to resurrection, Doctor. Anyway, it is now time for us to defend a Doctor Who New Who story against Hellbent. And today we have the very underrated Aliens of London and World War III. Take the floor, Will. You go first.
Well, Aliens of London is a very... I know at first glance everyone's like, oh, it's so immature and so childish because of bodily function humor, but no, actually, it's quite a thoughtful commentary on post 9/11 political interactions, and how politicians can easily weaponize mass public fear for their own self-serving ends, and it's also just kind of a hoot in general. I think it's probably not one of the best of Series 1, but it is definitely an underrated story that gets too much flack. And I think Harriet Jones is such a lovely... I'm not going to call her a MILF, because I was about to call her a MILF, but I don't want to pork her. I just use MILF as a descriptor now. Yeah, Harriet Jones is a great character. The drama of like Rose being away for a year and her having to confront her mum about what she's been doing all this time. Really, I'm sounding like Matt now. It's really engaging drama, and I was engaged. Yeah, that's why I think Aliens of London is Pog, actually. Whereas Hellbent... I don't know... See, this sucks. If you asked me like 3 years ago, I'd have much more enthusiasm for my disliking Hellbent, but nowadays I just don't care. So you could take the floor on that, Connor.
I was also going to add another thing about Aliens of London that's really cool, is the religious allegory. So obviously 9/11 is tied to an extremist religion group, right? But then so obviously this is an allegory for 9/11 and the politics that come with it. But you get that really great line from the Ninth Doctor. He's like, you know, you humans, you believe in invisible things that can't be proven, but when aliens are here, nope, can't see it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just logged into your Google Drive so I can upload the footage once we're done.
Yeah. It's basically Russell T Davies saying, aliens real, gods false.
Based, we stand a king.
Yeah, and it has a lot of great character drama with like Mickey and Jackie, and it has the narrows it down scene, the calcium decay and all that. All of that great stuff, and it has Tony Blair falling out of a closet dead, which is ballsy as fuck for Russell to do. It sets up the Harriet Jones Golden Age arc, which then ties into the 10th Doctor's character later on in the Christmas Invasion, and that has a ripple effect for his whole character. One of the only like really egregious plot issues I have with it is how easy it is for like basically the fact that UNIT never changed their password from Buffalo and all that time. That's the worst thing I could think of about the story. Mm-hmm. It's a bit stupid that UNIT didn't change their password. But no, apart from that, it's
the same password each time because the Doctor tells Mickey to input it 2 times.
Yeah,
so
Buffalo.
Just Buffalo again. Overrides it.
Yeah, and that's it. Almost comes across like lampshading a bit, like trying to be funny to make you not think about the fact that it's stupid that they don't have, that they have an easily accessible password that's just one. It's like Buffalo and then a bunch of numbers. Yeah, but no, it's I genuinely love that story. I think it's really underrated. I think people slag it off because it has fart humor, but I think that fart humor is a lot more satire than people say. Like, I think it's less about I guess kids would enjoy the fart humor of it because it's very surface level, but it's more than that. It's also about, the smug, stuffy politicians, shoving it in your face that they have control.
Yeah.
And it's being self-indulgent in their power. And I love the performances from at a Badland and who's the actor who plays the main Slovene guy? Oh, what's his name? I forgot all about his name.
He has a very specific name as well.
Yeah. Slitheen. There's 2 Game of Thrones actors that play Slitheen in that story, actually.
I think his name
It
has like
is.
start in it as a syllable.
David Very is the main one. You know, the one that plays Joseph Green.
Yeah.
The one who becomes like the de facto Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And then General Asquith is played by Rupert Van Sittart as well.
Yeah, that's.
He's like, "Do you think this is funny?"
Yeah,
there's also some great dialogue as well. Like, "Excuse me, do I not farting when I'm trying to save the world?" Silent but deadly. You know, all that golden stuff.
Yeah, people tend to view the fart humor as surface level to make the kids laugh, kind of thing. But it's not just that.
I mean, I'll admit that it's like there's an immaturity to it, but I don't think it's as cringe as some people say. Personally,
Yeah.
I think it's quite cheeky actually. But yeah, no, it's leagues better than Hellbent. The character stuff in Aliens London is so good for like the Doctor, Rose, Mickey and Jackie across the board, and Harriet Jones. It's incredible. Russell T Davies character drama, great politics, great commentary, great stuff with the world building, and very fitting of its time. Just the enthusiasm the Doctor has, and he's like, "Oh, this is fantastic," and it's literally been a terrorist attack. And it's a hoax one as well, the twist that it's a hoax, and he finds out at the cliffhanger, and it turns around that actually they were planning to hoax, and that ties into like the 9/11 conspiracy theory side of thing as well, of like, were they doing it just to distract us from a different war? Oh, it's brilliant. It's got some like really fun slapstick humor as well, and yeah, it's a hoot of a story. Whereas Hellbent, in terms of character, can't even compare to that. Not even on a serious level, it can't compare to that. Like I've gone through it before, but everyone who's watched these Worst Eclectica videos and all the other stuff where I've covered Hellbent, there's a lot of character drama that is unearned, whereas Aliens of London uses cause and effect to create the drama naturally and organically. So things like Rose missing a year, and Jackie slapping the Doctor, and you know the Doctor telling Rose, you know, could just leave her on a simmer. Or you get something like in part 2 where he says, you know, I made a promise to Jackie that I'd look after you, and I could save the world, but I'd lose you. You know, these are very well earned, naturally built up stakes that Hellbent doesn't achieve because it tries to force in things that aren't earned, that don't make sense, that are out of character, that are built on pretentious ideas that are contradictory to its previous episode in every possible way, despite the fact that it's consistent with the arc of the series, but the series itself's arc is contradictory and unearned anyway. And yeah, I'd be willing to concede that some of Rachel Trelawny's shots are better than some of Keith Boak's, but that being said, there's quite a lot of good, like, you know, panning shots and zooms, and you know, lest we not forget the scene where the pig gets shot and the Doctor reacts in that way, as you know, he was scared, and you get, you know, some of Christopher Eccleston doing his most sciencey stuff, really.
I mean, I feel more sorry for that pig than I do for Clara, so
yeah. So, and if people want to rag on the Slitheen CGI, I present you one Dinah TARDIS.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's that. Again, I wish I had more to contribute there, but like over time, I've stopped allowing myself to think about like post 2010s Who, except for Series 10. So I just kind of lost any drive to like passionately.
Well, that's why I tried to make it easy for you. We could praise a story that you actually like.
Yeah. Not do something like why, I don't know, what's the story I really do? Something like why The Lodger is better than Hellbent. It's like, oh god, like I'd rather shoot myself and watch either.
Yeah, and also the another thing I'll praise about Aliens of London is it has very, very good pacing and very good build up. It's captivating and it's very well placed and everything's well, escalated. I love that scene where they've been taken to, like, as hostages in some ways to 10 Downing Street, and they're all like really excited in the back of the car.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Rose is like, "Are we going to 10 Downing Street?" He's like, "We're going to 10 Downing Street, Rose."
I've always like
Like,
I know they're in the back of a police car, but it's always given me like celebrity vibes there, where they're like in the back of a limo.
I really like when he gets out of the car and there's all the news people there, and he just waves and smiles at them. And there's some iconic and like the way they utilize the news presenter as well. It's probably like that story and the Ambassadors of Death are probably the best stories in terms of utilizing a news presenter in Doctor Who.
Oh yeah. But no, Connor, when the missile hits 10 Downing Street, it should destroy Downing Street, but then just leave a Doctor-shaped hole there where he miraculously survives, and then Mickey says something like, "The first thing you got to know about the Doctor of War is that he's unarmed," and then that's how a Hellbent fan would fix Aliens of London to be more like Hellbent.
Yeah, the Doctor should have drank soup.
No, the cabinet room should have been a diner TARDIS in itself. And then Rose,
victory,
and then Rose
should be naked,
and then Rose and Harriet go off together to be Clara and Ashilda, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I would do voice impressions of all the Slitheen, but I've got a headache at the moment, so I don't think I can.
Yeah, I've got a sore throat, so it's
You live in a time of plague.
I don't think I have the plague, but
Neither.
I think it's just because I've had a workout with my throat, if you know what I mean.
And with that said,
let's end the video, yeah.
Next time we'll be back to begin the Sylvester McCoy era with Time and the Rani.
And if all goes to plan, I will be there too, so...
Yes, that is the plan. You'll be there and you'll have to insult yourself.
Yeah. Leave the will. So it's the will I want.
I'm very fascinated what Time in the Rani's going to be like. I hope it's like fun and not terribly cringe. Because I know it's going to be really silly, and I know it's probably going to be pants, but I hope it's a fun watch, like an enjoyable watch rather than a painful one.
I think it's better than this. But I know someone like Dylan would probably disagree with that.
Well, Jamie season 7 says that it isn't Time in the Rani his least favourite Doctor Who story.
I think so, yeah. But to be fair, he has a big hate boner for the 7th Doctor, so...
He really does.
It's because he's a big fan of that grounded 3rd Doctor vibe, and Time in the Rani is about as far away from that as you can get, so...
Well, the Ben Aronovich stories have unit in them, don't they?
Yeah. They do. The Time in the Rani is pretty far from that, so...
Oh, I imagine so. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm very fascinated to see what it's like, and I hope it's fun.
Yeah. See you then, bitches.
Bye-bye.